He said he needed space to clear his head. That it wasn't about me. It was about him. But what he didn't tell me was that he moved in with his ex-wife. My name is Emma. I'm 34, a practicing OBGYN, and until recently, I thought my life was solid. Not perfect, no life ever is, but stable. Daniel and I had been married for 6 years. We shared a nice home in the suburbs, supported each other through career highs and lows, and had even started talking seriously about starting a family. So when he sat me down one morning and said he needed a month to figure things out, I was blindsided. He said he was overwhelmed, burnout from work, that he needed to be alone for a while. I believed him. What I didn't know, what he didn't say, was that he had packed his bags and moved into the guest room of a woman he used to love. His ex-wife, the mother of his first child, and he thought I'd wait. Daniel and I met the way many people do, through mutual friends, at a dinner party neither of us wanted to attend. I was 26, fresh out of my residency, juggling late night ER calls and far too much caffeine. He was 28, working as a senior financial analyst, already climbing the corporate ladder with that calm, strategic mind of his. On paper, we made sense. I was the overachiever who had spent too much time in libraries and not enough learning how to relax. He was the quiet observer, the kind of man who made you feel like every word you said mattered. From the beginning, things moved fast, but not in a reckless way. He was thoughtful and measured. He made dinner reservations, sent good morning texts, picked me up after night shifts with coffee in hand. He asked about my parents, remembered my sister's name. When he said he wanted a future, he meant it. 2 years later, we were married. Our wedding wasn't extravagant. Neither of us came from money, and both of us preferred something more intimate anyway. Just family and close friends, a modest venue, fairy lights strung across the ceiling, and a jazz trio that played Sinatra covers we both still hum sometimes. Afterward, we bought a house in a quiet cul-de-sac. It wasn't huge, but it was ours. We painted the walls ourselves, argued about backsplash tiles, hosted game nights and holiday dinners. It wasn't flashy, but it was real. And for a long time, I truly believe we had something rare. Daniel and I were never the loud couple. We didn't post grand gestures on social media or fight in public. We were, as people often said, low drama, dependable, strong. I guess I wore that like a badge, proof that I had chosen right. He supported my career. He always said how proud he was that I was a doctor. Sometimes he even joked that he'd married the smart one. And I, in turn, supported his, through job changes, stress cycles, and one particularly brutal promotion process that nearly broke him. We talked about starting a family often. I was cautious. My job meant I'd seen the messy, heartbreaking side of pregnancy too many times. But Daniel was patient. We agreed soon, but not yet. Just a little more time. Of course, now I see the cracks. Not the big, glaring ones. No cheating, no abuse, no screaming matches. But the quieter kind. The kind that settle like dust in the corners of a life and slowly build up until you realize you can't breathe. We stopped doing little things. No more surprise lunches at work. Fewer hugs at the door. He'd come home and go straight to his laptop. I'd stay late at the hospital, even when I didn't need to. We'd eat dinner in silence, scrolling through our phones. Sometimes he'd ask how my day was, but more often, he wouldn't, and I didn't push. We told ourselves we were just tired, busy, focused on the future. Looking back, I don't know if I truly believed that, or if I was just afraid to admit we were drifting. But even then, even in the quiet distance, I didn't doubt his love. I never imagined he'd leave, much less lie. So when he sat me down one morning before work and said he needed time, I didn't question it. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I just nodded. Because I thought we were the kind of couple that survived storms. That space would help him reset. That this was just a pause, not the end. What I didn't realize was that the space he needed had a name, and a past, and a child that wasn't mine. The first few days after Daniel left were strange, but not unbearable. He told me he'd booked a short-term rental near downtown. He said he needed neutral ground to think without distractions. I didn't argue. I even packed a small bag for him, folding his clothes like nothing was wrong. The night he left, I curled up on our couch with a blanket and a bowl of instant noodles, watching reruns of a cooking show we used to enjoy. I told myself this was temporary, that every couple goes through something, that Daniel would come home soon, realize we were worth fighting for, and this would all feel like a weird blip in an otherwise good marriage. But by the end of the week, something in me shifted. At first it was just instinct, something subtle, something off. He stopped texting goodnight. Our check-in calls got shorter, colder. His voice was different, detached. I asked if he was eating okay. He said yes. I asked if he was sleeping. He said, sort of. I asked if he missed me. He said, I don't know. I'm trying not to think about that right now. That one hit. It was unlike him. Daniel was always gentle, even when he was upset. But that answer didn't sound like confusion. It sounded like guilt dressed up as honesty. I started replaying things, moments I'd brushed off. Weeks before he left, he'd been more withdrawn than usual. I'd find him standing at the kitchen window in the morning, staring into the yard, his coffee untouched. He'd zone out during dinner. Once, I caught him scrolling through old photos on his phone. The kind that weren't ours. I didn't think much of it then. I do now. One afternoon, I stopped by his office to drop off a charger he'd forgotten. He wasn't there, but his assistant said he was working remotely for the week. That was news to me. He hadn't mentioned that. I texted him, "Thought you said you were going to the office today." No reply for hours. Then a simple, "Needed a quiet space. I'll call later." That's when the questions started bleeding in. If he needed quiet, why didn't he just stay home that weekend when I was on call? If he wanted space, why did he take the framed photo from his nightstand? And why, out of all the people in the world, did his ex-wife suddenly view one of my Instagram stories last Tuesday? I hadn't spoken to her in years. Our paths had barely crossed. They'd broken up a few years before Daniel and I met. She had a daughter, Daniel's daughter, from that relationship. A sweet girl he visited once a month, usually for a couple of hours over lunch. It was distant and polite. That's what he always said. There's no flame left, just obligation. But now that word, obligation, felt thin, convenient. I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to be that woman, the one who checked locations, scrolled through followers, and connected dots that might not be there. I wanted to be trusting, reasonable. But I also wasn't stupid. So I did the one thing I'd never done before. I opened the Find My app on my phone. Daniel and I had shared locations for years. For safety, he said. I tapped on his name, watched the little blue circle load, and then I stared at the address that popped up. It wasn't a short-term rental. It wasn't downtown. It was a cul-de-sac 30 minutes away. I zoomed in slowly. It was her house. I blinked, swallowed, waited for the app to glitch. It didn't. His phone had been there for 3 nights in a row. That's when the noodles in bed fantasy ended. He didn't need space. He needed cover. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, phone still in my hand. That blinking blue dot seared into my brain. I kept refreshing the app every hour, like maybe, just maybe it would change. That it would jump to a coffee shop, or a friend's apartment, or some anonymous Airbnb, like he said. But it didn't. It stayed planted in the same spot. Her address, her house, her driveway. By 4 a.m., I wasn't shocked anymore. I was numb. And then, because pain has a twisted sense of humor, I remembered something Daniel had once told me. A year into our marriage, we were driving back from visiting his daughter. It had been one of those awkward, overly polite lunches at a chain restaurant, with the ex-wife sitting across from us, arms folded, barely making eye contact with me. Afterward, I asked Daniel if he ever missed that life, the one he left behind. He laughed. God, no. That door is closed, locked. I wouldn't go back there even if it was the last place left standing. But now here he was, back there. Not because he had to, because he chose to. The next morning, I didn't confront him. I didn't send a dramatic text or demand an explanation. Instead, I got dressed, went to work, and delivered a baby at 9:14 a.m. for a woman who'd been in labor for 16 hours. I smiled. I coached. I cut the cord. I held a new life in my hands while my own life was quietly bleeding out. I told no one. Not yet. Later that day, I sat in my car in the hospital parking lot and stared at the address again. The same little dot. Still at her house. So I drove. I didn't even know what I planned to do. Just that I needed to see it with my own eyes. Maybe a part of me still believed there was a logical explanation, that he was staying in the basement, or helping fix a leak, or something else ridiculous and desperate that would let me preserve the fantasy a little longer. But when I turned the corner and saw his car parked right out front, next to hers, I didn't get out. Didn't ring the bell. Didn't start a scene. I sat there for a long time, engine idling, hands clenched around the steering wheel. I watched the lights flicker in her kitchen. A shadow moved past the window. Lauder, his, floated out into the street, and that's when the tears finally came. Not loud, not dramatic, just silent, controlled. The way I cry when I lose a patient I've fought for. The kind of grief you learn to carry in a straight spine and a steady voice. I went home, alone. That night, I made a list. Not a list of questions for him. Not a list of things I needed him to explain. A list of assets, bank accounts, the deed to the house, shared credit cards, passwords I needed to change, the name of the lawyer my colleague had recommended a year ago. Just in case. Then I made another list, get tested, just in case. Order a pregnancy test. We'd been trying, after all. Call financial advisor, separate savings, do not call Daniel. The next day I called the lawyer. Her name was Simone. Calm voice, clear eyes, sharp mind. She didn't blink when I told her what was happening. He moved in with his ex. She asked, scribbling notes. I nodded. She clicked her pen shut. Let's make sure he doesn't get to move back in like nothing happened. I almost smiled. That weekend, while Daniel was playing house in the past, I was preparing for my future. I cleaned out my files, created a new checking account, closed the joint Amazon account. I even changed the locks, not out of spite, but out of certainty. He had already left. I was just making it official. 3 days later, I got a text from him. "Hey, just checking in. Hope you're okay." That was it. No explanation. No apology. Just a breadcrumb of guilt tossed into the void. I didn't reply. Because by then, I wasn't waiting for him to come home. I was waiting for the results of a blood test. And when the nurse called the next morning, I already knew what she was going to say. Her voice was kind. "Emma, congratulations. You're pregnant." I hung up, placed a hand on my stomach, and smiled for the first time in days. Because now it wasn't just about what he did. It was about what I would do next. I prepared to win quietly. Pregnancy has a way of changing everything. It didn't matter that it was early or that the second line on the test was faint. I knew. My body knew. And suddenly, the decisions I'd been making in quiet fury now had a deeper urgency. This wasn't just about heartbreak anymore. It was about protection. I wasn't just walking away from a man who betrayed me. I was building a shield for someone who didn't even have a name yet. The morning after I got the news, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of mint tea and my laptop open. No dramatic music, no shaking hands. Just tabs filled with information: prenatal care options, maternity leave paperwork, and housing law. I called Simone, my lawyer, again. "I'm pregnant," I told her. She paused for half a second. Then we moved faster. That week, I gave her everything she needed: income records, shared expenses, screenshots of texts, and even a folder of photos showing his car parked at her house night after night. No angry captions, no messy emotional explanations, just facts. That's what wins in court. Not tears, not betrayal, paper trails. Simone told me we'd aim to file within 10 days. Clean, swift. I asked about custody. She raised an eyebrow. "You're the one with a stable job, the house, and now a pregnancy. He's the one who left." Then she added, "Emma, you're not the one who should be scared." Meanwhile, Daniel still hadn't asked to see me. No calls, no voice messages, just 2 vague texts spaced out across a week. "Thinking about you. Let's talk soon." He didn't ask how I was. He didn't ask where I was. And he sure as hell didn't ask if I was carrying our child. I started seeing my OB in secret. Switched clinics, used a different email to schedule appointments. It felt ridiculous at times, like I was a fugitive in my own life. But part of me didn't want Daniel knowing anything until I decided he should. At the 7-week scan, I saw the flicker on the screen. Tiny, rhythmic, steady. A heartbeat. Mine stuttered, then steadied. That was the moment something inside me hardened and softened at the same time. This baby wasn't a complication. This baby was clarity. I didn't tell anyone at work yet. Instead, I buried myself in structure. Meal prepping, filing tax documents, creating a nursery list. Not because I was shopping, but because I needed a vision. A plan. Something that belonged to me. Every time I passed the framed wedding photo in the hallway, I didn't cry. I didn't even flinch. I just noted that it looked more like a stock image than a memory now. And then came the moment I'd been preparing for. Daniel showed up. No text, no warning. Just the sound of keys trying the lock, unsuccessfully. I opened the door slowly. He stood there in jeans and a gray hoodie, holding a small bag and a sheepish look. "Hey," he said, as if it hadn't been nearly a month. "As you can tell, I changed the locks," I replied, stepping into the doorway, blocking him. He laughed awkwardly. "Yeah, I noticed." We stood there in silence for a moment, him waiting for me to step aside. I didn't. "I figured I'd come home," he said finally. "Try to reset." That word, reset, hit something raw in me. "You moved in with your ex-wife, Daniel," I said, voice even. "That's not a break. That's not space. That's betrayal with good lighting." He blinked. "She was just helping me figure things out." "Did you figure them out in her bed?" He flinched, didn't answer. I crossed my arms. "I'm not interested in the version of you that thinks I'm a placeholder." He dropped the bag on the porch. "Emma, come on. We've been through too much." "No." I cut in. "I've been through too much. And now, I'm done going through anything for you." He looked stunned. "What does that mean?" I didn't answer him right away. I stepped inside, grabbed the manila envelope Simone had prepared, and handed it to him. Inside were the preliminary divorce papers. Asset division proposals, custody notice, prenatal documentation. He stared at the folder, then at me. His voice cracked. You're pregnant." "Yes," I said calmly. "And no, that doesn't change anything." He left without another word. That night, I lay in bed with my hand on my belly again, not crying, not breaking, just breathing. Because now it wasn't about saving a marriage. It was about preparing for war and protecting what mattered most. But I had everything ready. He showed up again 5 days later. Same driveway. Same hesitant knock. Only this time, I didn't answer the door right away. I let him stand there. Let him feel the weight. When I finally opened it, Daniel had a look on his face that was half hope, half regret, like a kid showing up late to class with no homework, but still expecting mercy. Emma, he said softly, like the sound of my name could undo what he'd done. I didn't invite him in. He glanced past me into the hallway. I've been thinking a lot. I leaned against the doorframe. That's what you said you needed. I know, and I got it. That clarity. He gave a small smile, like he was proud of himself for arriving at a conclusion. I want to come home. I miss us. The word stung, because I remembered who we used to be. But the man in front of me wasn't the one who held my hand during all night shifts or rubbed my back when I had the flu. This man had packed up and walked away to test out a different life with a woman from his past, and now he wanted to slide right back into mine. I already told you. I said, this house isn't your reset button. He sighed, frustrated. Emma, don't be cold. You lived with another woman, Daniel. Temporarily. He shot back. I wasn't romantic. I raised an eyebrow. She's your ex-wife. We have history. We share a kid. She offered me space and perspective. I folded my arms. And a guest bedroom, right? He flinched, caught. Then he softened his voice again. Look, I made mistakes. I let old feelings confuse me. I thought I needed to explore something, but now I see. I was just running. I said nothing. I miss this life. I miss you, and I want to do right by the baby. That stopped me. His eyes locked on mine. Yes, I know. I tilted my head. And how exactly did you find out? He hesitated. Your sister messaged me. She saw a prenatal vitamin bottle in your bathroom during a visit. Of course. Note to self, don't leave family unsupervised when they ask to. Drop by real quick. Daniel smiled like he'd found a way in. This changes things, doesn't it? A child. Our child. I took a long breath. Yes, I said. It changes everything. His eyes lit up. But not the way you think. I stepped aside. Not to let him in, but to grab the folder sitting on the hallway console. It was heavier now. Signed. Processed. I handed it to him. He stared down. You're serious? Absolutely. But, Emma, come on, he said, his voice rising. We're having a child. And I'm going to be a mother, I said. That's why I won't be anyone's backup plan. He looked stunned. I'm not treating you like a backup. You left to explore someone else. Then you came back because she didn't want you or because you remembered I'm safer. You're not choosing me, Daniel. You're choosing what's left. He threw the folder on the porch railing. You're being emotional. You don't have to burn the house down just because we had a rough month. I took a step closer. You didn't forget to take out the trash, Daniel. You moved in with your ex-wife. You slept in her home, ate her food, and played house with her daughter, while I was here, pregnant. And you didn't even ask. He fell silent. I could see it in his eyes. He was calculating now, trying to pivot from regret to control. You're going to make our child grow up in a broken home. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so textbook I could have written the script myself. No, I said. You did that. I'm just drawing the boundary. He tried again. We can co-parent. We can go to therapy. This doesn't have to be ugly. It's not ugly, I said quietly. It's clean. He looked like he wanted to yell, maybe cry, but he didn't do either. Instead, he muttered, You'll regret this. I nodded once. Maybe, but I'll regret staying more. When he left that day, it wasn't storming, no cinematic thunder, no slamming doors, just footsteps down the porch, the sound of his car starting, and a quiet house behind me that finally felt like mine. Later that week, he tried reaching out again. Messages. Voicemails. One even said, I'll fight for us. But it was too late. Because I wasn't the Emma who packed his bag for him anymore. I was the Emma who prepared, who hired the right lawyer, who changed the locks in the will, who refused to negotiate her dignity. One night, I sat in the nursery I'd started assembling. No pastel colors yet. Just a quiet room with soft light and an empty crib. I ran my hand over the edge of the railing, and instead of sadness, I felt peace. My child would be born into truth, into strength, into a home that never made them feel like a backup plan. Daniel once said, We're the kind of couple that survives anything. He was wrong. We're the kind of couple that teaches you what to never tolerate again. And I thank him for that. I let go of the version of me who waited. The divorce moved faster than I expected. Maybe it was because I didn't flinch when Daniel tried to stall. Maybe it was because I never raised my voice, never begged him to admit more than he already had. Or maybe it was because I had receipts for everything, and he had no defense. His lawyer asked for leniency, citing Daniel's emotional state, and even tried to propose joint ownership of the house. Simone didn't even blink. Her name's on the mortgage. His is not. He left voluntarily while she was pregnant. We're not negotiating stability. We walked out of the courtroom in under 40 minutes with everything I'd asked for: full custody, the house, no spousal support, a parenting schedule that gave him minimal influence until the baby was born and legal paternity confirmed. And just like that, the man who once swore he'd build a life with me faded into a legal arrangement. Daniel didn't take it well. He called. He texted. He showed up one last time, this time not at my house, but at my hospital. It was a Thursday. I'd just finished a long shift and was grabbing a coffee when I saw him in the lobby, pacing like he'd been waiting for hours. "Emma," he said, stepping toward me like we were still married. "Don't. I just want to talk. Everything's been said. I just—" He rubbed his hands over his face. "I didn't think you'd actually go through with it." That made me pause. He didn't think I would. Of course. Because people like Daniel don't believe they can be left. They think their absence is a cliff you'll wait at forever. But I didn't wait. I built a bridge and crossed it. "You didn't think I'd go through with it," I repeated, voice calm. "But you thought I'd sit alone in our house while you lived with your ex-wife. That I'd carry this pregnancy alone while you found yourself in someone else's sheets. And then what? Welcome you back with open arms when you decided I was safe again." He swallowed hard. "I was scared." "So was I said. "The difference is, I didn't run." That was the last time I saw him in person. The rest was email, formal, distant. Scheduled drop-offs for prenatal appointments he rarely showed up to. I didn't chase him. I didn't update him. I lived. The baby, our baby, was born 2 months later. A girl. When they placed her on my chest and she opened her mouth to cry for the first time, I cried too. But not for Daniel. Not for what we lost. I cried for the sheer miracle of her. For the life that came from heartbreak. For the strength I never knew I had, until she made me need it. I named her Nora. A name I'd chosen alone. A name that meant light. Because that's what she became. Mine and enough. Daniel came to see her once. Just once. He stood in the doorway of the hospital room, awkward in a button, down that still had a dry cleaner tag on the sleeve. "She's beautiful," he said. I nodded. "She is." He asked if he could hold her. I hesitated, then agreed. Because I wanted to watch the moment he realized what he'd lost. Not just me. Not just a home. But the chance to build something real with the woman who stayed. He cradled her awkwardly. And when she started fussing, he looked at me like he didn't know what to do. I took her gently, and as she settled in my arms, I said, "She doesn't know what you did. But one day, she might ask why you weren't here." He looked like he wanted to respond, but I stopped him. "Don't answer now. Just think about what you want her to believe, and what you can actually live with." He left soon after. And this time I didn't feel anything. Not anger. Not sadness. Not victory. Just a quiet, steady peace. A year passed. Nora grew fast, bright-eyed, stubborn, and full of joy. She laughed in her sleep. Learned to grip my finger tightly. Every time I looked at her, I was reminded that letting go of Daniel was never a loss. It was a trade. And what did I get in return? Was everything. I went back to work part-time. I built a small nursery at the hospital so I could bring her with me on certain shifts. People asked about Daniel. I told them the truth. He's around, but we're not. One afternoon, I saw him at a park. He was alone, sitting on a bench, watching a family that wasn't his. He looked older somehow, not in his face, but in his posture, like someone carrying a weight he couldn't quite name. Our eyes met for a second. He lifted his hand. I gave him a polite nod. Then he turned back to Nora, who was toddling toward the swing set. She squealed as the wind caught her baby curls, and I smiled. Because this quiet, imperfect, steady life was mine now. Not the one I had imagined, but the one I chose. I didn't wait. I didn't beg. I didn't break. I simply walked away. And in doing so, I became someone I finally recognized. Not the wife who waited for a man to come home, but the mother who built one without him. People say heartbreak changes you. They're right. But what they don't say is that it can also clarify you. Daniel thought I'd pause my world while he played with old flames. He thought love meant endurance, that I'd stand at the door, waiting for a man too cowardly to choose me the first time. He was wrong. I didn't stay. I didn't plead. I didn't prove I was worth keeping. Instead, I prepared. I protected. I chose peace over chaos. And when he tried to return, I let the silence speak louder than any argument ever could. Now, every morning I look into my daughter's eyes. I don't see a broken story. I see a new one. Written by me. With love. Not for a man who left, but for the girl who made me stay standing.